in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving higher.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Markets with Shawn Hackett. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Dawsontire and Wheel, your premier ag tire and wheel provider in North America, helping people grow. TractorZoom delivering insights, and Dryshod Boots, the official work boot of the Moving Iron Podcast. Shawn is a financial advisor with Hackett Financial in Boca Raton, Florida, and Shawn is always gracious enough to be on the show every week. So, Shawn, how you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing really good, feeling excited, and looking for opportunities as we move into the hurricane season and everything else. So,
well, yeah, based on yesterday's close, it sounds like there's plenty of opportunities out there to come our way. There was a pretty big correction in corn and beans yesterday. Well, pretty much everything yesterday. There's a pretty big correction, and a lot of it having to do with the fact that they're still hung up on this massive banner bin busting crop that's going to come around. So, I guess give me your reactions to yesterday's trade and what you saw happen there.
If you really think this through, not this past Monday, but last Monday, when the crop corn conditions came out 3 points higher from the USDA on Monday evening from the prior week, that set the whole thing off, really. The market at that point decided the crop's been made on corn. And we've been selling off ever since. And then yesterday, FC Stone, who's a widely followed firm in agriculture, came out with a 182 corn yield based upon their analysis. And the market took that and used that as a reason to sell further. And then what happens at some point, Casey, is the margin calls build up. You break technical support. More traded sellers come in. And so it just starts to feed on itself. And then all of a sudden the soybean market started to fall because the same people that are in corn are in soybeans and they're in wheat. And then what you had, all of a sudden, the whole grain complex is being sold because the corn market was under duress. So you just kind of had an all-out sell it all yesterday for the grain complex. And that happens sometimes, especially as we get close to harvest. The market sometimes can get a little schizophrenic like that when it gets overly bearish. So,
yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some areas of the world of interest here. There is the La Nina effect are starting to take effect into Western Africa, like you talked about. First of all, so I'm referencing your latest report you just put out, and I've had about 3 minutes to read it. You got it to me pretty right on time, man. And I read the executive summary, and the beginning of it, you kind of outline the heat is back, and that is for sure. So out here where I'm at, heat right now is I think we're supposed to be 95 plus degrees for the next, well, pretty much for the month of August. I don't think there's any day less than 92 or 3 or something like that for the next 3 days. Winds blowing, those kind of things. So out here the conditions are very hot and very dry. We're getting the rain, but it's very sporadic and it's not widespread by any means. And I think it's the same story as you look across the Midwest. So let's start there. Let's talk about the weather patterns that you see taking hold in the Midwest, and it's the key growing areas of corn and soybean country, because I can tell you out here that when corn was pollinated, it was 100 and some degrees and not a lot of moisture going around. So from the road, the corn looks good. I imagine if you wait out to the middle of it and start looking at ears and what have you, that they're not going to be as big and full as what we've seen in the past. So talk about the weather patterns you see there and what that effect is that you're going to see on the overall yields right now.
Well, June, July temperatures are in. We actually have the exact numbers. And we went back to 1970, Casey, and looked at the average temperatures just for the Corn Belt, where the prime Corn Belt regions are: Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa, that sort of thing. And And so this ranks is one of the top 7 hottest June, Julys since 1970. We went back and we looked at, and we only picked out areas that had what we would call average to somewhat below average rainfall, meaning not everybody had a drought, but there were dry spots. There were some spots that got rain, but it was, as you said, kind of scattered hodgepodge. And every one of those years, we had a below trend line corn yield except for one in 1987, where we were marginally above trend. So with this year having temperatures equally as hot and with overall moisture being below average, it is hard for us to conceive that the 182 yield that seems to be coming around the consensus, like FC Stone, are going to be correct. I think it's been 10 years, Casey, since we had a hot summer like this. It's been a long time. And I think the market's just forgotten what high temperatures can do to corn pollination and corn yields, because it hasn't happened in a while. The last time we had a June, July this hot was 2010-11. Now, we take the drought years off, like 2012, 1988. This is not a drought year like that, where everyone got nothing. I mean, we want to separate that because that's a catastrophic year, okay?
Right, yep.
So when we look at that, I don't see. Yes, the crop looks great. Remember, in 2010, the crop looked just as good as it does today, and the corn yields came in 10 bushel to the acre below trend that year, and they had better moisture than this year. So we're sticking to our guns. Have the genetics improved so dramatically that heat no longer matters? Anything's possible, but we doubt it. And we just think the market's misanalyzing the market, thinking, well, it looks so good, it has to be good, and they're not correctly modulating the heat that we've had. So now that's June, July. August, we're having a little bit of a cool start, Casey, in, let's say, Central East, having a little bit of a break from the heat, but the heat is going to start to come back to those regions as we move into the middle of August. You already have it. You already have it. It's going to start migrating from west to east, and it's going to dry out again. So La Nina, if you look at the actual sea surface temperatures of the Central Pacific, we're at minus 0.8 now. It's the strongest La Nina signal we've had all summer. Minus 0.5, you need to have is the minimum threshold for La Nina. We got to minus 0.8 this week, according to the NOAA measuring, the measuring that they do for the sea surface temperature. So this means that, that La Nina is starting to dig its heels in, as we've been talking about. It's going to get more impactful, and that means a warm, dry finish to August. And so we think soybeans could catch a bid here. While corn pollination is primarily done, pod setting is just getting started. So if that heat comes in middle of August and onward, with the soybean market, which sold off because of this cooler weather, we think there could be some buyers coming back into the soybean market, as they may have overplayed this early cool start and maybe misjudged the fact that the heat's going to come roaring back. So overall, we think much of the selling is behind us. There could be some follow through on, margin call selling, some games being played with technical sell stop orders and such. But we think we're going to dig our heels in here and start to rally by the end of the week, ahead of next week's report from the USDA. Oftentimes the market sells the rumor of the report and then buys back as we actually get the report itself. That's what we think we're doing now.
Okay. Explain that La Nina negative 0.8 thing. What does that mean?
Okay, so if you look at the Pacific Ocean and you look at the center of the Pacific Ocean, right where the equator is, right? And El Nino means you have warmer than normal temperature. So a plus 0.5, that means that temperatures are 0.5 degrees above normal.
Okay.
A minus 0.5 means that those central Pacific sea surface temperatures are 0.5 degrees, or in this case, 0.8 degrees below normal, cooler than normal.
Okay.
And in order for a La Nina to be considered, you have to at least be minus 0.5. Right now, minus 0.8. It can get to minus 2 degrees below, by the way. That's when you have what they call a super La Nina. We expect to have a super La Nina coming in 21-22, where it's 2 degrees or a degree and a half below normal. We're just getting started with a weak La Nina that's going to really get going next year and the year after. And that's why we're really concerned about weather volatility coming off the rails with historic winter coming for 21-22, and 2 back-to-back more, what we think could be a severe drought like 2012, either in next summer or the summer after. So we're really concerned that weather is going to get really ugly here in the next couple of years, and not just here. This is not just a U.S. phenomena. This is a Northern Hemisphere phenomena. We want to be looking at Russia, especially Russia, for something to happen. If you remember 2010-11, the Great Russian Drought dropped wheat production almost in half during that period of time. So as big as Russia has become as the number one exporter in the world of wheat, that's another region to watch for some big time weather problems coming up. We're just getting started, Casey. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is the warmer, drier pattern we've seen this year, albeit not the drought year, it is a precursor to what's coming. So
exciting, good news, Shawn.
Well, prices will go up a lot, so there will be an opportunity to sell forward years. So, I'm not looking forward to having farmers have a poor crop. At the same time, if you can get prices higher and they can sell forward when the crops get better, we need to do something. We can't be living with sub $3 cash corn for very long. So
no, that's a good point. No, we can't be doing that. So, all right, so let's talk about case La Nina, like you're talking about there. It's having some effects already in Western Africa right now, and according to your report, and there is and that's in a key. We've never talked about this before, so I'm kind of excited about this. But it's a key cocoa growing area. 65% of the world's cocoa comes from that area, and that is over in the soft market. So talk about OJ with the hurricane season coming up and what you see with cocoa.
Well, Ivory Coast and Ghana produce 65% of total production. Just think, so anything that goes wrong in that region, as you can imagine, is hyper sensitive to the market. So we've already seen cocoa prices rally from 2,200 to 2,450 just in the last week on this developing dryness. And it looks to us, Casey, like this is going to continue for the better part of August. And we're coming into a pretty important period for crop yield determination. It's their off season, meaning, tree crops like cocoa have a big season, a slow season, a big season, a low season. Trees have to rest and then they put out. They have to rest and then they have to put out. So this is the rest year. So in a rest year, if we have poor weather, you could have a really small crop. So it's really something that could take this market up a lot higher if it continues beyond mid-August. And we think there's a very good chance, Casey, that it will. La Ninas are notorious for causing drought-driven rallies in the cocoa market, especially in the late summer into the fall. So it is a market to watch, and it's already on the move. So in terms of hurricanes, La Nina is notorious for active Atlantic hurricane seasons. We've already had 9 named storms, but they haven't really impacted too much because it's too early in the season. But from late August into the middle of October is the period where the U.S. normally gets impacted by having these storms make landfall. And so the Gulf Coast, especially the deep south near Louisiana, South Florida, unfortunately, where I live, is going to be in the crosshairs. And the East Coast, especially North Carolina and even up into the Northeast. That if you saw that track of that storm that it kind of shaved Florida right up the East Coast.
Yeah,
we think that could happen again and again, but with a much more powerful storm than the one that came through. That means, so what does that mean? It means orange juice, which is grown in Central Florida, rice, which is grown. Arkansas represents half of U.S. rice production, which is right there in the deep south where Gulf storms love to come in, and of course cotton, Texas, deep south, southeast. We think there's going to be a lot of potential trading opportunities for those 3 markets. If a storm gets confirmed to start heading in that area, everyone needs to be on the lookout, not only for buying opportunities, but selling opportunities. There's always a post-mortem storm leaves aftermath buyer's remorse correction that happens after storms come and go. So I guess what I'm getting at, Casey, lots of volatility in these 3 markets. So if you're a producer in cotton or rice or orange juice, you need to be looking for those kind of spike trades to sell. If you're on the buy side, you sure want to make sure you protect yourself and put some protection in going into the season so you don't get caught having to buy into a spike trade, hurricane rally kind of a thing. It's just not something, if you're in the buyer of these markets, a cash buyer, that you want to be chasing those markets into a vacuum like that. So.
Okay, so one other thing we've talked about here quite a bit is that desert locust situation that we're seeing. And in Africa, and over in the Horn of Africa, in those areas, it looks like it's kind of subsiding, but everything has moved north. And it looks like there's still a big issue along the India and Pakistan border, where we see like some key growing areas for sugarcane, cotton, those kind of things. And still seems like there's a very big situation there, especially coming up into their monsoon season that we're seeing. So what's your thoughts there, and is this something that's starting to die out, or are we starting to see that resurgence of that second hatch come up?
Well, they call them swarms, right? These desert locusts are called swarms, and the reason they're called swarms is because they have stages. We had the spring egg laying stage, and they all hatched at the same time, and we had the spring swarms that took over Africa, took over the Middle East, and even into Pakistan. That was the first wave. It got into India a little bit, but it wasn't. Most of the egg laying didn't take place in India. But now what we had in July, we had the second wave, which is the summer egg laying season, where and these swarms are bigger. So you get the initial one, and then they actually expand and lay more eggs than they did the first time. All those eggs are hatching now. So now we're going to get the summer swarm desert locust infestation that will impact August and September. That all took place much further into Pakistan and into India. So while the last swarms were mostly Africa, Middle Eastern concentrated, this swarm's going to be mostly what we call Pakistan, Northern India focused, and maybe a little bit of Middle East. So we're anticipating that we're going to have a big problem with, and especially the northern half of India. And what do they really grow in the northern half? They grow a lot of cotton in Gujarat, in that northwest quadrant. They grow a lot of sugar. They grow a lot of rice. We would think those three markets are your three top markets that could be impacted where futures markets trade around the world. So we'll know a lot more here in another couple of weeks, exactly how bad it's going to get, how crazy they're swarming, and some of the implications. But it's clearly could be a market driver that we've been talking about really since the early summer, to be on the lookout for August summer swarm to see what happens. And so that's another area that we think could provide some spike trade opportunities in those three markets. And if you think about it, we already talked about cotton and rice for hurricane season. So we have hurricane season for cotton and rice, and now we have the desert locust potential for India. So it looks like those two markets seem to be in the crosshairs for a lot of different catalysts that could drive those markets higher over the next couple of months right now.
A lot of stuff going on in the world right now, man. A lot of crazy things happening all over the place, whether it's weather related or locusts or.
Well, remember, the fall armyworm, which has been ravaging the corn crop in China.
Yeah.
That's going to start to become very evident in terms of the damage done as we start getting closer to harvest. Meaning, what's going to happen is harvest is going to begin in China, and they're going to go in those fields and realize, holy cow, these yields are way short. Last year, in a lot of the Asian countries that had the fall armyworm, corn yields were down 10 to 15% on average from what they were supposed to be. So forgetting the floods that they're having there, which is another issue, but the fall armyworm, we think is, the fall armyworm loves the corn crop first. If all else, it'd rather eat the corn crop than any other crop out there if it has a choice. And so we'd really be looking for that to be a catalyst as the harvest begins there later on in August as another potential driver here for the corn market. And we think it's one of the reasons why we have $8 corn prices in China right now, and why they're buying up record amounts of U.S. corn. We think there's something to the fact that they are fully aware that this corn crop's going to be in trouble there, and they're getting ahead of the curve while U.S. farmers are willing to sell ahead of harvest.
So while we're on that, the flooding thing, the Three Gorges Dam, we've talked about it a few times here, and it's on the verge of of massive failure and what that looks like. So right now there are typhoon seasons going on over there, and they've just about the time one river settles down, one of the other two rivers that come together to form that area gets fired up. And right now there's the I can't remember what the name of that river is, but anyhow, it's getting massive floods, and they're talking about the Yangtze River. It's it's really testing the overall security of what that dam looks like, and there is from every article I've read so far, there's a very high likelihood that dam could fail. So I guess.
Well, remember, it's not just now, Casey. It's the next couple of months, because the La Nina pattern means extremely wet Asia. Asia is very wet during La Nina years, especially China. That's what we normally see. The problem is we're in a grand solar cycle minimum, so it amplifies the effect, and that's why we're having these epic, 1 on 100 year floods there, because that's what grand solar cycles do. They amplify things. So we think more rainfall is going to be coming, and we'll have to see if that structure can hold up for another couple of months before the rain subside or not. Getting information from China is very difficult to come by, as you know, and I don't know how bad it isn't, other than to say I do believe there's damage being done to the dam, and that there's a I've heard a 30% chance from engineers that know more about it than I do, that know a little about dams and know a little bit about how that was constructed. They say there's maybe in excess of 30% chance that it could fail over the next couple of months if we get some more heavy rainfall and the pressure stays on. And, I hope quite frankly, I hope it doesn't happen. 465 million people would be impacted. Right now, about 50 to 60 million people are impacted. Still big numbers, but I mean, if 460 million people were underwater, it's a humanitarian disaster, the likes we've not seen in modern history. So I deep down don't want to see it to happen. It's not up to me for it to happen, but if it were to happen, the food problem, the humanitarian problem, forgetting the washed out crops, just all the crops that are in storage will be wiped out.
Yeah.
They'd be wiped out. I mean, they'd be ruined. So it would put food scarcity on a level we have not seen in a very, very long time. So I think that's another reason that the Chinese are starting to buy a lot of food from us. I think they're very aware of the risks that are going on, and they're trying to get ahead of the curve there as well. Should it happen, Casey? I mean, obviously, we would pray for the Chinese people that are impacted, but at the same time, the demand for food would go crazy, and it would be good for U.S. prices, and it would be good for U.S. farmers, with that kind of demand coming in. Not that we want to have high prices on someone else's misery, but nonetheless, if it were to happen, it would be a huge driver that no one's really that no one could have anticipated would be even possible. But it is possible that it could happen this year. It's possible.
That'd be crazy. That'd be almost half of their population would be displaced because of that. That's a big number.
It would be larger than the United States population would be impacted. We have 380 million, give or take. It'd be the entire country it would be like the entire United States being underwater. It's just, I can't even wrap my hands around it, quite frankly.
Yeah. Just to put it in scale.
So needless to say, it could cause one of the wildest dysfunctional global pricing for ag products we've seen in anyone's memory, because the kind of the needs that would be required to handle that loss of food production in a country as large as China is unimaginable.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to happen, but if it were to happen, it would be a catalyst that would overrun any bearish thought that anybody has right now and cause a bull market the likes we've never seen before.
Yeah.
In our markets.
It'd be nuts. It'd be the equivalent of everything east of the Mississippi River being underwater and displacing that amount of people and land and everything. It was crazy to think about.
And the other thing you have to remember that when this has happened before, this has happened before in China. This is not the first time. This dam wasn't there. This happened.
Yeah.
Couple of times every century, this happened to them, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and I did research and I read the historical documents of what took place during those times. And it wasn't just that it ruined crop production and spoiled crop and supplies in the current year. It ruined crop production for 2 more years because of all the damage to the infrastructure, the soil. They did not get back to production as usual. It took 3 years to 4 years to get back to normal. So this would have a tentacle beyond just the now. It would have a multi-year tentacle to it before they could come out of it and get production back into the place it needed to be. So it would be crazy, Casey. And of course, if that were to happen while the La Nina kicks in for 21-22, you could start going wild with what could happen here with markets. As bearish as people are today, you could come up with a realistic scenario of some really wild stuff happening going forward, depending on the sequence of what actually happens here. So, I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm just laying out what's possible right now. That is the situation. That is possible.
Yeah,
that is possible.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. I hope everything works out over there for him, so not to worry about this.
I do too. I really hope so. I hope so. We'll get our prices up another way. I don't want to get them up through that way. But if it's meant to happen, if that's the way it's supposed to go, and it happens, there's nothing we can do to stop it. All we can do is help out by selling them a bunch of food. That's and then we will.
Yeah, and China's done a lot to evacuate those areas downriver that would be affected by that and what that looks like. So, knock on wood, everything works out for them.
Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, a lot of crazy stuff happening right now. Lots of reasons to have keep your eye to the forecast here. What's going on? If folks want to reach out to you, Shawn, and get some information about what's happening here, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Our website at Hackett, Hackett, advisors.com. Lots of information on our front page, sample reports, interviews, to have a good idea of to see what we do and to see if how we look at things might be of value to your listeners. So absolutely.
One other thing, too, that I want to talk about is on August 9th, which is Sunday, Shawn and I are going to do a live deal on Twitter and a few other places. But the Moving Iron Summit that was going to take place in Nashville on September 1st through the 3rd had to cancel that due to COVID-19 and phase 2 restrictions in Nashville there. So looking at moving that into January right now, just getting solidified on some dates. But Shawn has been gracious enough that he's going to give his presentation that he was going to give there, and we're going to go live on a few other platforms so people can watch that. So I'm looking forward to that, Shawn.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. We got some. It's going to take what we did last year at your conference, which is more of a broad approach to these weather cycles. Is going to bring it a little more granular and get down to a little more of the specifics. And so I think it'll be a great extension to what we did last year and get people really honed in onto what's coming. And we're right on it now, Casey. Before it was, it's a couple of years. It's now next year it begins what I think is going to be the beginning of this wild ride we're going to be on with these natural weather cycles. So it's a very timely time to do this with your podcast show. So
well, I'm looking forward to it, man. I think there's going to be some great information come out of it, and I hope everybody gains something from that. So, again, the Moving Iron Summit has been canceled for the September 1 through 3, and we're going to look at some January dates, getting those solidified here with the hotel, and I'll make an announcement on that pretty quick. So, Shawn, appreciate you being on the podcast.
I'd love to be here. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Casey.
All right, man. Appreciate it. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the Moving Iron Podcast, check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you're going to find the latest podcasts as they get posted. Also, movingironllc.com has all the latest Moving Iron info. Check the Global Ag Network and the great podcasters there. And with that, I am Casey Seymour with Shawn Hackett. Let's go move some iron, folks. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here.